Welcome to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast with your host, Brandon Seigel. I'm a published author, speaker, entrepreneur, and private practice strategist dedicated to transforming the way that healthcare functions. This podcast is all about empowering you to create the change you want to see. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. Thank you for tuning in. In this episode, guess what? I brought him back, Mr. Eric Miller with Econologics. And we're talking today about one of my favorite topics, which is this idea of multiple income streams, diversifying beyond your practice. And I think this is so critical because a lot of people always come to me and they're like, Brandon, it seems like you've got your hand in so many pots. And I say, I want to be prepared because at any given point, literally something in my business can change. And I don't want to be the effect of it. So how do I make each thing work as a standalone ecosystem? Literally last night, 8:30 p.m., real story, lost a client, a good client, a lot of revenue. I'm fortunate where I told my team, no layoffs, no nothing, whatever. We recalibrate. I go out, I go ask for referrals and different things, but I have other revenue streams that allow me to secure and stabilize my business even if and when I lose some revenue in different ways. So, Eric, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Beyond real estate, because I like real estate, but beyond it, what passive income strategies work best for time-strapped practice owners?
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with this because you're not wrong when it says that the goal of creating multiple income sources is definitely something that we try to aspire to. And most people's definition of financial freedom would include that they have multiple income sources that can pay for their given lifestyle. I think the one thing I want to impress upon people is this. Make sure that you have one that is really, really flowing like the Mississippi. And I say that because I've seen a lot of people that will just they'll just go off and like whatever glittery thing that they see, they kind of get their attention dispersed a little bit. So for most practice owners, I want to make sure like get your main income source, which for the large majority of people is your practice. Get it humming and purring, get it flowing, and then we utilize that to create these other income sources that you're talking about, whether it's real estate or some other ones that we'll get into. But I just wanted to make sure that people, it's a great concept. It is important. We want to build multiple income sources, but the sequence in which you do it is really, really important. And getting that one really flowing, like I said, like the Amazon, the Mississippi, whatever metaphor you want to use, get that really, as large as possible, and then make sure that you can utilize that to create other income sources. I wanted to start with that. Not answer your question.
Yeah.
Besides real estate, what other types of passive income streams could we look for? Okay. Well, let's get into this in what other types of investments out there. So I'll be general in terms of what that would look like. And I'll probably use maybe 4 different categories that we can look at. I mean, first and foremost, there would be what are called marketable securities. Now, most people would think when I say, what is marketable securities? So those would be anything like stocks or bonds, anything that these companies that trade on a daily basis, that you can buy, publicly traded companies that you can go on any one of these, markets and purchase. And by and large, people have done this for, over 100 years. And, some people like stocks and bonds, some people don't. And I try to separate out the emotion attached to something as opposed to what does it actually do? What are the risks? What are the characteristics? What are the volatility and potential returns? And just know what you're going to own before you own it. Okay. But I think by and large, intelligently investing in this, in the public securities arena, whether that's, dividend paying stocks or, for people that have a lot of money that want to avoid taxes, municipal bonds. I mean, there's so many different types of investments in there, but that is a way to generate income or dividends that maybe you don't necessarily have to work for every single day. That's one area right there, publicly traded securities. Okay. And you can stop me whenever you want to, because I'll probably riff on this just for a second.
I'm all for this.
The second category we'll look at would be what I would consider insurance-based products. Now, what are insurance-based products? So there's this whole other area of in the financial industry that deals with risk. And what is the biggest area that what's the biggest concern, fear that most people have is running out of money. Like, I don't ever want to be in a position where I feel like I'm running out of money. So this industry is here, the insurance industry. Now, most people that are listening to this are have had their dealings with the health insurance companies, and you probably don't like insurance companies very much. And you know what? You have every right to do that. But I think there's a difference between life insurance and annuity companies and then the health insurance companies. Just because the government is intertwined in this and the life insurance and annuity industry. Okay. That being said, what is the design of these companies? These companies are there to protect money and to ensure that people get lifetime income streams from them. They are not growth vehicles. Okay. I'll repeat that. These are not growth vehicles. They're not designed to get 10, 12, 13% returns every single year. They are designed for tax purposes. They're designed for lifetime income. They're designed for some liquidity, but they are designed well. They can provide stable, guaranteed income for a household. And I highly recommend anyone that's, trying to create a ginormous portfolio for themselves would include that. Okay. So that would be now, and then we get into alternative investments. All right. And there's a whole area of alternative investments that people can get into. One that I've seen that's what has been workable for kind of generating passive income would be like the private credit market. So people just think that banks are the only one that lend money. No, there's ginormous companies out there that lend money to institutions, to private equity groups. And if you're an accredited investor, you can invest in those. And, and I've done this, and, returns are 7-9% somewhere along there. There's risk to it as well. But I just don't want people to get boxed in to think, well, the only way to generate passive income is either real estate or that's it. Real estate certainly can do that, but then you have to be tenants, toilets, trash, responsible as the landlord. There are investments in real estate where you don't have to necessarily do all that. But anyway, those are some options there. I could probably go on, but do you want to ask me a question?
And just to tie this to some reality, I'll use my personal kind of experience.
Yeah.
So I've always loved real estate. And
yes.
Eric, why do you think I love real estate? Honestly.
I would probably say because just trying to think, you have such
I'll give you the answer.
A problem solving mind that I'm trying to think.
Well, I don't like it from a financial standpoint. I like it from one other standpoint.
What's that?
I like that I can see it. I can touch it. I feel that I have control. If the world comes to an end, I still have a shack that I can burn a little stove oven in. There's something there. And I remember when I started kind of my financial planning for my family before I worked with you all, it was through basically what I'm going to call is 4 lenses for everyone to think about. The first lens was, okay, how do I buy a house so I'm not paying rent? That was my first investment. I had to buy a house. I didn't recognize that, houses lose money, all these different things. I just thought, well, I'm paying money and losing money by renting. And sometimes the rent makes sense. You have to recognize that not always does it make sense to purchase the house. The next area was stock market. Everyone's like, you got to be in the stock market. You got to buy Disney stock. You got to buy Netflix stock. You got to buy these $600 a share stock. And I'm like, oh, I got 5 shares, and I'm not seeing anything. And then So that was the second thing. The third thing was 401k. Got to have a 401k, Brandon. You can't do anything without a 401k. And then the fifth thing, you know what the fifth idea was?
What's that?
Cash, Brandon. Stick it under your mattress. You got to have cash. And I didn't recognize that every dollar I had under my mattress lost value every day.
Yeah. And that is true. And now there is some value, I think, as you can attest to having liquidity there, because now you could take advantage of when markets go bad, you have the cash to do so.
But I'm literally talking physical cash, physical cash, like literally, like I'm going to stock $20,000 in my sock drawer. Like it was that kind of thing, like drug dealer worthy. And I'm not a drug dealer, but you get my point.
I get it.
The mindset was so wrong because I didn't recognize that one of the goals is to have my money work for me instead of always working for the money. And so I bring this up because I remember, like, my brother-in-law said to me, he's like, Brandon, like, there are far greater assets than real estate to invest your money in. And I was like, I don't believe it. And he's like, what do you like about it? And I said, I like the touching thing. He's like, well, what about gold, Brandon? Gold you can touch. Gold is a good investment. And so what I'm trying to bring to the audience is sometimes we have such stuck viewpoints on what is and what isn't. And ultimately, the reality is we need to diversify so that we're never stuck in one way. So yes, I have liquidity, but my liquidity, I still am making money, as I shared in a prior episode. I'm still getting, $500 a month for just having it sit in this account. Okay. Then there is a certain amount of cash that I hold just because I'm like, God forbid, bank shut down. You need a little something just in case.
Totally necessary.
Then obviously with Eric and your team, we've got stuff in the market, in the stock market, but it's long-term. It's like, hey, what are those expectations? So when we're looking at diversifying beyond your practice, part of it is what's short-term, what's long-term, what's upside, what's risk, and putting together the buffet versus just the meat on the table. Would you agree?
100%. I think, I think you articulated it great there. You have to look at your investments from a time frame as well, because some of them you're not going to need the income from these or the return of the money right away. And you can take some more risk. You don't have to worry about some of the volatility that may occur. And investing in that area, dollar cost averaging in that area, which is just kind of like periodic investment over a period of time, is a very, very smart strategy. Having liquidity, people are like, why do you have, cash just sitting around? Don't you know it's not doing anything for you? And I'm like, okay, great. But it makes me feel really good. And, there is an art to financial planning as well. Everyone's different. And there's value in feeling good about your situation as well. I mean, I'll have a lot of people that said, don't ever pay, like you should never pay off your home. And I'm like, okay, clearly you've never seen the look on a wife's face when the home is paid off, because that is a look that is invaluable. Okay. It's invaluable to that husband that knows he did great work. It's invaluable to know the peace that family has. So it's not just all dollars and cents and returns on a spreadsheet. You have to make sure that you understand, but again, when it comes back to investing, you really just have to know what you own and why you own it. Yep. And most people can't really tell me that most of the time. And if you can, great. I know that you have a pretty good investment plan that's going to work long-term.
Now, one thing that people haven't also heard about is, so we've got our real estate and we've got, obviously 401ks or IRAs, and we've got our life insurance and we've got stock market and we've got bonds and we've got all these different ways that we can invest in different monetization strategies. But then there's also this thing, which is something, as you know, I stay liquid for this reason. I want to buy more businesses. Yes. I love business. So right now I was very transparent. Selfishly, I'm like, oh, do I want to buy my first investment property? But when I ran the numbers, Eric, I recognized that the upside of the investment property was not as great as the investment in a business if I find the right business and I take advantage of the ecosystem of what I already do. And so a lot of you are already doing payroll and doing management and doing HR. And like, I have to be very transparent. If you can make a private practice profitable, you can make a lot of other business models profitable as well.
No
And I
doubt.
just think that, there's opportunities. And it's funny, I was speaking with my lawyer yesterday about it. I'm like, keep your eye open. If you hear of anything, like I tell everyone, I'm like, it doesn't have to be private practice. Like I'm really open. And I made a joke. I said, I tell my wife I want to retire owning a UPS store. And she's like, well, that is not a good investment brand. I go, I know that. But the point is, I love business. And so there's the
Yep.
aspect of what is the investor relations and what is that upside versus like, how do you want to be involved with that investment? Do you want to be hands on? Do you want to be hands off? And so real estate can be both hands on or hands off. Some of these other aspects, like life insurance and stuff, they're hands off. And that's where a lot of people.
Completely. And and look, not everyone's built, definitely not like you, that really digs in there and would do that, but it is that's another area that I think people can get into. Like if you run a business long enough, you do learn a lot of things. And if you do it well, you can transfer that intellectual capital over to another business. Doesn't have to be in your industry, can be, that will translate to success. And part of that is like, I'm not going to buy a job. Okay. I'm going to invest in something that can run. And I just kind of guide it. I'm there to guide it and give advice from above, but I'm there. And look, I mean, what are the stats now? We have baby boomers that are retiring. We have, $1 trillion, if not more, of wealth that's going to transfer. Business ownership is a big part of that. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. You just have to find those businesses that really, aren't functioning that well, that need an injection of life and systems.
Yeah.
And there's some opportunities out there in all different kinds of industries.
100%. And often you'll see this with those that invest in what I call portfolio businesses. Like it doesn't make sense for me to own a standalone Subway, but if I own 36 Subways, it's a whole different game, if that makes sense. So my next question to you is, we've talked about this idea of like passive income, diversifying, different ways. How do we balance reinvesting in our practice versus building outside investments? Like, how do I know if it's like, hey, I'll give you an example. Eric, I've got a physical therapy ortho clinic. We are 1.8 million top line revenue. I can either open up another location, invest in the company growth, or you know what? I'm going to take this year to just kind of like, do you have any kind of algorithm or decision making and when it's the right time to pour another round of revenue into your company versus taking that profit and putting it back into the household investment strategy?
Yeah. So, I mean, if we look at the breakdown of a 20% profit margin business, all right, now we try to say 10% of that goes directly to the household for what we call into what we call a wealth storage account that's used for investment purposes for the benefit of the household. Let's say 3% goes to taxes of that 20% because that flows through to your household. I want to keep 3 to 5% in business savings because Brandon needs 6 months of cash and I want to make sure money's in there. Right. And then, you could probably add another 3 to 5% back into what we would just call business expansion and development, which would be, reinvesting back into the practice, however that looks, whether it's new equipment, whether it's, another location, a down payment, whatever it would be. And maybe there's a situation where that's not enough to acquire a really big practice. So we would just have to like maybe take some money out of the wealth storage account to reinvest back into another business. I do know this, that I'm never going to be able to match a rate of return on a well-run practice. Like there's no investment that you're going to have that's going to do better than that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, if you're getting 20% on your dollar, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I find a lot of practice owners are missing the mark is they're not compensating themselves for the time that they actually put in. They're not So I say it in the way of they're not valuing their time. They're like, I work 60 hours a week and blah, blah, blah. I go, well, the 60 hours a week is the investment in that. And then at what point is it at a point where, hey, this thing is a well-oiled machine, you know?
Yes, exactly.
So
So,
what are you finding are common mistakes that we're seeing as it relates to wealth building with practice owners? Like I'm finding a lot of people are they're getting stuck with their wealth building strategies. Especially, I found this very common in like what I'm going to call is like the 2003 to 2010. We saw a lot of Ponzi schemes. We saw a lot of these
yeah.
people. Like, why don't we talk about where you're seeing a lot of wealth building mistakes that are happening?
Well, definitely, I've unfortunately had to deal with this too. Is gosh, where people just don't understand the investment and they get. I mean, I just had to deal with this with a client the other day that got an investment scam,
Mhm.
and they didn't see the red flags. They didn't see the constant demands for the money. They didn't see that there was no licensure or investment proposal or so first and foremost is just not is understanding where the money is going to go. You work too hard for your money. This is where I hate to see people get scammed out of their money. There's the other thing too of just all the what people I think consider just like free money, all the crypto bros and all of the, trading that they think they can do. And this all goes back to the word that you had mentioned, which is exchange. Wealth is created on exchange. Okay. So if you see people that are using these get rich quick, or, they're making, 20 bazillion% on their money by investing in XRP or, something, to that. Okay, great. But where's the exchange at?
Mhm.
All right. I know people have made millions of dollars overnight. Very few people have been able to keep that sustainable amount of wealth. So it just goes back to exchange. What am I getting in exchange for that? It's a great lesson, and it's a great word for a lot of people to really understand.
Yeah, I think when someone is trying to attract investors, they're prioritizing the opportunity over the risk. It is your job to evaluate the risk. And I know, early on, I remember I had a friend who was doing big real estate deals, shopping centers, and all this stuff. And he kept hitting it. And I always say the scariest thing is when an entrepreneur hits it and thinks they're invincible because they
Yeah.
think anything they touch, they're going to hit. And he was offering 10% return on your dollar and taking your money and showing you every month the value.
Yep.
But until you cash it out, nothing's guaranteed. And
Nope.
let me just tell you, the majority of people in his final deals lost everything.
Yeah, I believe it. And it doesn't mean that he was a, a a bad investor. He just may have gotten caught. I mean, this happened with a lot of people, especially in real estate 3 years ago. A lot of people bought real estate in 2021 before interest rates went up. Interest rates went up almost 5%
Mhm.
in between there. And all those real estate deals now are, basically worthless. They can't afford them and they had to give them away. Really good operators, but they just got caught in a bad environment. And that's something that, sometimes it's a bad environment for something.
It
So yeah, that's
wasn't
another,
intentional. So
right.
there's a
Wasn't
difference between a
intentional.
Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme is intentional. And then
Correct.
there's an investment gone bad.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Buying real estate in 2021, especially commercial real estate or apartment complexes, when the interest rates went from 2% to 7%, they're not going to work. Those people aren't going to be able to sustain that. So it's just sometimes you have to deal with the nature of the market and understand the risk that you took. And I had clients that lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in bad apartment deals like that
Yeah.
because they did that. And it's unfortunate. I can't say that I didn't try to say this is a risk, but you know,
So when we're building our wealth building strategy, and I'll kind of end with this, Eric, and would love your feedback. I feel like there is this combination in which we have a foundation of stability. And as
mhm,
we have more stability, we build on those investments that maybe have a little more risk. I know you have an entire process in your model. Why don't you talk about how your model works? Because you've put me through the system where we're measuring my risk assessment, but also just how I'm diversifying my own investment strategy so that I have stability and opportunity.
Well, I will say this, that the greatest success is from concentration. Okay. That sounds like, oh, wow, I thought diversification was the key. Well, maybe so, but if you really look at a business owner's net worth statement, 70% of their net worth is tied up in either their practice or their practice and the building of their real estate. Okay. So they're concentrated in those things. And my point is this, we do need to start divesting away a little bit. And how do we do that? And that's where we try to separate out practice profits. We set up what's called a wealth storage account, which is practice profit money goes into there. We utilize that money to then, invest in those categories that I'd mentioned, either stocks and bonds, insurance-based contracts, real estate, other alternative investments and such, just to start building some other income sources that have some predictability to them, maybe a little bit lower risk than what you would get in your practice. Because again, there's 1,001 things that can go wrong in your practice. You lose, 2 or 3 providers, all of a sudden your profit margin goes from 20% down to 5%. And I don't think people realize like what happens to the value of your practice because of that. Yep. So all we're trying to do is create this some stability for your household so that it's not relying 100% on the practice revenue. So we don't take huge risks with that money. I always, if people want to like have their little $10,000 crypto account and trade and do whatever they want to, fine, go do that. But you really have to be a steward of money and mindful of that. And your priority should be, I want to get my money back. Okay. And that should be the first and foremost on your investment policy statement. Now, rule number 1, I want to get my money back. Okay. Rule number 2, I want to make an adequate, not excessive return. And repeat rule number 1 and rule number 2.
Well, it's interesting because we always think of entrepreneurs as you have to have a high risk mindset. But if you look at my risk scores in the surveys I've filled out, I have a very low risk approach to life, to business and everything. And different people have different things. So don't let anyone tell you that you have to have high risk in order to be successful. It's just that if you're going to take on that more risk, the juice better be worth the squeeze.
Amen.
Well, I thank you, Eric, for being part of this. Please don't forget to check out Econologics. Check out Eric's book. Reach out. Our show notes will have a bunch of stuff for you to access him as well. As always, you can reach out to me. But Eric, I so thank you for being part of this episode. And thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to like us, subscribe, follow us on Instagram. Together we can thrive, not just survive. Thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I'm incredibly grateful to each and every one of you. Exciting news. We're now available everywhere, from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to YouTube or anywhere you like to listen to your podcasts. So watch, listen, and reach out. If you love this episode, please drop a 5-star review. It truly means the world to me. Are you looking for more ways to elevate your practice? If so, now is your chance. Reach out, go to my website, or email me at brandon@wellnessworksmp.com. And remember, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.